Hello and welcome to the TTI Distribution Download, the podcast where we talk about all things happening in the world of electronic components with the specialists of TTI.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, everybody. Thanks for plugging in to TTI's Distribution Download. I'm Kris Whitehouse, the Supplier Marketing Manager at TTI. I've been in the electronics industry for over 30 years and one at TTI. This episode, we're welcoming John Holder, TTI's Technical Marketing Manager, Gustavo Jimenez, the Associate Product Manager at Littelfuse C&K, and Thane Parker, Director of Business Development at Littelfuse. Thank you for being here today. This episode, we're going to talk about the unsung hero of switches in building automation. John?
Gustavo, there are dozens of systems in a building automation. For daily interaction like elevators or access control, what should design engineers know?
Even inside elevator and access control systems, there are multiple applications to define. In the case of elevators, we can review switches for user interface, sensing, control panels, and security access. In the case of access controls, we can find electromechanical switches for security cameras, detection in lock systems, fire alarms, and presence sensing. So you can imagine that there are going to be multiple type of switches to be provided to the designer here. So for this type of market, we also have an understanding that the design engineers have a specific goals for next generation of platform. They want to achieve energy efficient solutions through the use of new technologies, of course. They want to generate comfort, productivity. They want to increase efficiency in their systems. At the same time, they want to generate smarter systems through data collection, monitoring, remote analysis, and maintenance. At the end, we want to align our switch offering with their particular needs. This also means that we have a complete portfolio of switches to select for this specific job and application. So it is most likely that we will be able to answer the specific demands through our portfolio of electromechanical switches, as we offer almost all of the electromechanical principles out there. Each of them do offer their own terminology and ecosystem for integration and functionality. In the event the need is beyond the limits of a catalog product, we also offer solutions based on product variants that could impact performance, mounting conditions, and others. In terms of interaction, we can also add value by the use of wire leads, wire harnesses, or also we can offer a complete design following principles of modular integration. As always, following electromechanical principles.
Is there an order of operations for selecting the right switch for building automation applications?
Yes, there must always be a logic to follow for selecting the right switch. Hopefully, customers will be able to find a solution with an off-the-shelf product. If not, then C&K Littelfuse are always a valid source for variant design, as we explained before. For a specific application, it is always good to know if the switch will be part of user interface, if the switch will be behind the scenes for sensing, or if it will be a set and forget type of switch. So once this definition is given by the designer, then the electrical ratings are always mandatory to review. Is the switch going to be signal level, or is the switch going to be power level? And if it is going to be power, is there a need for an external agency certification? On the same topic, what level of circuitry is needed? Number of poles, number of throws that will be needed for this electromechanical component. Now, defining the function and the electrical ratings are always first. Then the form factor will come with additional solutions based on mounting conditions, interaction with the rest of the system, and haptics if the switch is going to be directly activated by the user. At the next topic, we need to have a discussion about environmental conditions. If there is a need for sealing properties, if that is going to define a specific type of plating conditions or accessories that will be used for integration purposes. And finally, discussion needs to happen in terms of performance. We have defined some performance characteristics based on environmental But others like force, travel, direction of activation, and number of cycles on a momentary or permanent condition will help to fine-tune the right type of electromechanical principle and the switch family to use for a specific application. Maybe something important to add at the end is that these rules are not only for building automation, but these rules should be followed for the right selection of electromechanical component parts in general.
So what are the main considerations when designing switches that will be used in security or fire alarm systems?
There are multiple applications for security and fire alarm systems, but in general, this is where we will find many types of absolute encoders, miniature tactile switches for reset, setup conditions, or code entry systems, permanent detect for anti-tampering or position sensing. So generating a single path is not easy, as we go through so many types of electromechanical solutions, but we can define a path for engineers to follow based on the application. And again, functionality is always first. Define if it's going to be a momentary, a permanent detect, if it is going to be a multiple set positions or a set and forget definition. This means that we can have solutions like tactile switches, snap acting switches, momentary or permanent detects, and deep code switches. Electrical rating, circuitry, agency recognitions, and activation conditions will be always the next step to follow. Form factors, mounting conditions, environmental conditions should follow. And finally, for precision switches like snap acting mechanisms or tactiles, we need to define all the mechanical characteristics for integration with the user or the mechanism.
So without naming names, are there specific customer success stories that you could share with us?
Sure. And I think we can review 3 examples of switches adopted for this kind of applications. Let's take as an example a miniature long life tactile switch that will achieve positive haptic effect and can be used for a door entry security keypad. On this particular case, you can imagine that the perception of feeling is going to be very important for the designer and for the user. And also the life expectancy on this particular tactile switch is going to be critical for the selection of the right product. Another example could be based on a modification that we can do on these tactile switches. We can take this momentary system solution and we can transform it into a permanent detect solution that can be used for anti-tamper solution. So instead of just using the switch to generate an electrical pulse, we can use the switch to be permanently activated. You can generate one activation only due to the placement of a lead or a housing on top of the actuator, and it can be pressed for a long period of time. By the time the lead or the housing is removed, then this switch should be able to come back to its original position extremely fast. Let's say that in less than 250 milliseconds, that will define the use of a permanent detect switch on this kind of application. Maybe a third switch example for this type of device is a basic deep switch or an absolute encoder. Depending on the number of positions or the actuators, it can generate a unique electrical code or address that will allow the central panel to identify its location. In any case, there are many types of applications where an electromechanical switch can be used. Our mission at Littelfuse CNK is to guide and support customers through the selection process so the right solution is integrated. And as we described before, in the event a variant or a more complicated design, let's say a value add or a modular design is needed, this is actually what our engineering team do the best. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, John. Thane, is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, that was an excellent overview, Gustavo, and thank you for that. You can probably tell from what Gustavo, some of the examples he gave, there's a wide variety of switches that you can choose from, a wide variety of characteristics. If you have any questions at all about what type of switch you should use, whether a snap, tack switch, slide, etc., or the characteristics of that switch, please do not hesitate to reach out to your local TTI expert. They're very knowledgeable about the Littelfuse C and K switches. They can help you there. If you need help with the integration of that switch into your systems, certainly they can get you connected with the right Littelfuse C and K switch experts. We have application engineers, design engineers that can help you with your application and make sure you have the right switch that meets all of your needs.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your knowledge and insight on Littelfuse C and K switches within building automation. We look forward to our next episode and our conversation regarding innovating and customizing switches. And thank you again, listeners, for plugging in with us today, and tune in again for our next distribution download.
That's it for this episode of the TTI Distribution Download. For more information on any of the topics you heard about today, reach out to your nearby TTI branch at 1-800-CALL-TTI or visit us online at tti.com.